All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If we have some others joining in, then we'll catch everybody up. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. If you are on Zoom, feel free to drop a hey or hello in the chat. I typically try to avoid the Q&A, so if you see a Q&A, try to stay away from that one. It doesn't show me real live time questions, answers, things like that. So I like to use the chat. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, welcome. You have your comment section. You feel free to use that as well. I really love when you guys participate. Tonight, we are going to look at English all-in-one. This is part 3 of 3, vocabulary acquisition. So a little bit, in case you are new, because I do see a couple new names this evening. Welcome. I am Tammy Summerlin. I will be your host for the evening, if you will. And a little bit of information for you. If you are brand new, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. At the end of the evening, what I will do is I will post all of our notes. So that way, if we add anything as we go, you'll have real-time notes from everything we've discussed tonight to review on. I also will post a link for the handouts so you can access those as well, and an answer key. So if you need a further explanation once you're trying to review everything, you'll have that at your fingertips as well. Okay? Any questions before we get started? I do have this handy dandy little slide for you built into the notes. It gives you the free live webinars, the free TEAS question bank, the on-demand videos, provides you with the QR or the link to connect with us on socials, and the QR if you are interested in tutoring as well, along with the email address in case you have any questions after the fact. Now, this is part 3 of 3. If you missed the first 2 parts, don't worry. We'll be circling back around to those. So look on the October calendar and see when the next one will be offered. I pretty much am doing them every Wednesday and rotating between English and reading. However, there are a couple weeks where I have to get off a little bit and change to a different night. So just make sure to check out the calendar. All right. So any questions before we get going? Now, like I said, we are going to review material, but we are also going to do a bit of practice this evening. So please feel encouraged to ask questions, practice answering questions in the chat, in the comment section. I really enjoy when you guys engage. It really helps me get a judge of how you're doing with the material. So do not hesitate. If you're on Zoom, you have a little bit more privacy because only I will see your comments. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you're a little bit more exposed, but you know what? We are all here to learn. There's no judgment at all. Okay. All right. Oh, I see I got some more people joining in. Welcome, welcome. I'll try to recap on everything I just said. All right. But since no one seems to have any questions, we are going to just dive right on in. So I have these goals listed here. It's pretty hardy, but just to kind of summarize for you, I do a lot of extra notes just in case you want to go back and review anything later. But we are going to look at 2 main goals for this evening for this all-in-one section. Now, please remember, if you are new, this is a review session. It's an all-in-one. So what that means is we're going to review all of the components of this section. We just unfortunately do not have time to do a deep dive into the nitty-gritty of each subtopic. So you might hear me throughout the evening mentioning, oh, check out this on-demand video, or I do have this on-demand video, and I might, cite the information so where you can find that. So just be on the lookout. If you need more in-depth with something, let me know, but I can also guide you in the right direction of where to check out an on-demand video that might be beneficial for you. All right. So we're going to look at 2 subcategories, and that is employing basic knowledge of the writing process elements, and then analyzing word parts to establish meaning. So we will look at how to break those words down and tell the difference between the prefixes, suffixes, and root words. A little bit of math, actually. So if you don't know how to break down word parts, we will definitely accomplish that tonight. So for the first section, just jumping right on in, we are going to look at 3.1, that is employing basic knowledge of the writing process elements. So what is the writing process? Well, this is called a process because it is going to involve more than one step. Writing will never be done in one step. There's no wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We are all completely done. You should never go into the writing process, just as a little tidbit from an English instructor. You should never enter one of your English classes and expect your paper to be perfect the first time around. I know a lot of my students, we're just getting into the throes of writing their first essay with my freshman comp class, and they are terrified to write their first essay because they put so much pressure on themselves. So just keep that in the back of your mind, because once you get into your schools, because I know you all will pass your TEAS and you will, I have faith, and you are taking your freshman comp classes, just keep that in the back of your mind. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. The writing process is going to involve several steps that help you to successfully create and improve your written work. So keep that in mind as a question on the TEAS. There are several steps, and the reason being is that it's going to create and improve on the work. A lot of times you will see that tonight when we talk about these different steps, there are going to be some gray areas where they start to overlap, but we're going to look at some tips and tricks to be able to distinguish the difference in those steps as it pertains to questions, especially multiple choice or those trick questions you might get on the TEAS. So the goal of writing is to produce a clear, well-organized, and refined final product that effectively communicates the writer's intended message for the audience. So again, we're going to look at those writing steps and see how they break down. Sorry, y'all, I'm having to keep taking sips of my Diet Coke. I feel like my voice is going to fade out. So what are the steps in the writing process? Well, we're going to talk about pre-writing, and then there's the writing. Then you're going to have what we call conferencing, revising, and editing. So we are going to look at 5 steps, 5 stages in the writing process this evening and what each of those entails. So for pre-writing, this is the first stage of the writing process where the writer is going to gather ideas, plan, and prepare for the actual writing. You will not sit down and write your you will not sit down and write your initial essay or your paper right here from the get-go. You will do activities that help you generate your ideas. You will organize your thoughts, and you'll prepare to start writing your first draft, but you will not actually put pen to paper and produce a coherent essay. It's all about putting pen to paper to get ideas flowing and out of your brain. Okay. So in this step, note, you always want to consider the purpose, the audience, and the main points that you're trying to relay with this paper that you're writing, this essay that you're writing. So that's something that you are trying to focus on: purpose, audience, and main points. Okay. But again, we are not actually writing complete sentences. We are not writing a complete essay. We are just generating ideas and organizing thoughts. A couple of common pre-writing techniques that you might hear about are brainstorming, free writing, outlining, researching, mind mapping, and something we call clustering. So a couple examples of those for brainstorming / free writing, those are they go hand in hand. This is where you're simply just jotting ideas down in a random format. For example, if my topic was I'm writing a persuasive essay about why I need to get a new puppy. A couple ideas I might jot down is, oh, they're so cute. Oh, I can cuddle with it, and it's going to help me not be lonely. So again, I'm not creating coherent, complete sentences. I'm just jotting down the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about that topic. So I'm just getting my ideas flowing. Now, with outlining, this is going to be for those who want a little bit more structure. This is where you're going to see that transition of thoughts moving from introduction, including the thesis, moving to the body paragraphs, where you're going to have topic sentences, supporting details, conclusion sentences. You might use some complete sentences here, but majority of the time with an outline, you're not going to. But you are going to see these Roman numerals or this tapered breakdown of ideas. There's also one way of pre-writing is to do researching. So this is where if you are given a particular topic that you absolutely have no idea about, you can go out and look up the overall topic to gather an understanding in order to establish main ideas. This is not plagiarism. This is just researching. You're not using those ideas and creating a whole paper based on someone else's thoughts. You're just using the thoughts that are out there as a form of pre-writing to get ideas just flowing through your mind. And then we've got something called mind mapping. A lot of people will refer to this as a bubble map. So we start off with a bubble. What's the topic? What's the prompt of what we're writing about? And then moving into those ideas, again, not complete sentences, but just getting the ideas on paper and using bubbles, mind mapping, to accomplish that. Now, after the did I skip one? No, that's right. Now, after the pre-writing step, you're going to move into what we call the writing process. Now, be mindful that this is also referred to as the drafting stage or the drafting phase of the writing process. In this step, this is where you're going to start creating those complete sentences, where paragraphs are going to start forming and being drafted. These will be constructed of an introduction paragraph, body paragraphs, which the amount of those, the number of those might vary from essay to essay, and it'll be wrapped up with a conclusion paragraph. Each of those paragraphs should have a main point, followed by supporting details that provide specific examples and specific details. Now that's for the body paragraphs, but you should have those three necessary components: introduction, body paragraphs, and that conclusion. So this is the initial version of your essay. But again, as I mentioned earlier, you are not putting emphasis on perfection at this stage. This is simply the preliminary round of writing, and you're getting your central focus should be on getting ideas on paper. So forming those complete sentences, we've got ideas flowing. Now we're going to form complete sentences, form complete paragraphs, which will mold into a complete essay. But again, you are not looking at perfection on your essay. Now, conferencing, that is when you have a finished draft and you should ask for feedback. So when you're conferencing, essentially, you are going to get feedback from peers, so your fellow classmates or friends, tutors, or potentially from instructors. So conferencing is all about reaching out and getting feedback. Feedback is the key word for conferencing. That's the takeaway here. The purpose of conferencing, again, I just mentioned that the key word is feedback. So feedback and revisions. Feedback can provide comments on strengths and weaknesses in the writing that will help the writer identify weak areas that need to be revised. It can provide clarification and understanding. So the reviewer might ask for clarity on the writer's purpose to ensure that the writing is effectively illustrated to the intended audience. So are we getting these points across clearly? It's also to provide support and engagement, because remember, you're engaging with a peer, with a tutor, with an instructor. You're seeking that feedback to provide reassurance to you, the writer, in order to build up confidence and motivation to move forward with the writing process. This is also to help foster collaboration and learning. So I'm giving you some key phrases, terms to keep in mind. So this is becoming popular because this is a learning opportunity for both the person who's having their work reviewed and receiving the feedback, but also for the person who's giving the feedback, because this is where those two people can share ideas, strategies, and be able to come to terms and understand the writing process a little bit better. Now with revising, I know we're moving pretty fast, but we are going rock and roll tonight because we're going to do some practice. We're going to do some real life, or not real life, but we're going to do some application. But with revising, after you've established your initial draft, you've sought out feedback, you're going to take that feedback and you're going to move into what is probably the most important stage of the writing process, because this is going to go beyond. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just checking to make sure I've got everything spelled correctly, or oh, I'm making sure I've got all my punctuation correctly. Well, actually, I'm sorry to bust your bubble, but you're not going to do that in the revising stage. Whoa, Nelly. What? Yes, I know. Mind blown. But during the revising stage, we're not even, I tell my students, we're not even going to worry about those little minor, well, not minor sometimes, but we're not going to worry about the nitty gritty of the grammar, the mechanics. We need to focus on organization. So is there clear organization within this essay that you've written? Is there clear structure? Is it defined really well in the writing? And have you provided the accurate and adequate content for this prompt? So again, we're not looking at grammar. We're not looking to see if things are spelled correctly. Do you have all your commas in the correct place? That is not even going to be looked at all. Zilch. None. Nope. Not during the revising stage. Revising stage is focusing on organization, structure, and content. And I know I keep repeating myself because I'm trying to drill it in you, though. Okay. A couple aspects of the revising stage to keep in mind. So, content evaluation. This is where you're assessing the strengths, the relevance of ideas that are presented, considering if arguments are made clearly and supported clearly, if the evidence compelling, if it's an argumentative, or is the information provided accurate? So is there citations if need be? Again, I can't drill this in enough. During the revising stage, structure and organization. So you're examining if the organization of the entire piece is there and ensuring the ideas are presented in a logical, coherent manner. This is where you're going to check that paragraphs are fully developed. Is there a strong introduction, strong body, and a strong conclusion to wrap it all up? Okay, so we're just going back and essentially starting with the first round of our checklist, making sure that we have the necessary components and the required content for this essay. So clarity and coherence. So you're making sure that there's no confusing or vague points. Again, we're not looking at grammar. We're looking at the thoughts. We're making sure that we've got clear, concise, and understandable language. So how are you wording it? And then last but not least, audience and purpose. So you understand that the intended audience and the purpose of the writing is what? Are we there to entertain? Are we there to persuade? Is it informative? What is the purpose of the writing? Why is this author writing it? And who is the target audience? Okay. All right, so I've talked quite a bit. Does anybody have any questions about anything we've talked about so far? I see a couple people joined in. Or a couple more people, excuse me. Welcome. Everybody good? Thumbs up? Okay. All right, so trucking along. A couple more aspects of the revising stage. Again, this probably seems like we're droning on, but it's really all about making sure you're familiar with these terms. So sentence and paragraph revision. During the revising stage, you're looking at sentence structure, word choice, tone. You're looking to make sure that there is clarity and you're improving on the impression that the piece is giving. Okay. So this is where you're going to incorporate feedback from that conferencing stage. You're going to reflect on it and start applying it as long as it's in terms of content, structure, and organization. There will be multiple drafts. Okay, so in real life, when you get this in your comp classes, just make sure you remember that you might write 2 or 3 drafts before you turn in your final draft. All right, so editing. A lot of students will get it confused, the difference between the revising stage and the editing stage. A lot think that that's all one stage merged into one, but it's actually 2 different stages. And that's what might trip you up when it becomes question time. Sorry. I'm like, can't get my words out. But with the editing stage, unlike the revising stage where they're only focusing on content, structure, organization, this is where it's going into what I just mentioned a while ago about the fine-tuning stage. This is where they're looking at those not minor. I don't want to say minor because grammar is major. I love grammar. But it's that fine-tuning stage. We're looking at the nitty-gritty. So this is where you're going to improve on the mechanics, the language, and not language as in terms of is it vague, is it coherent, but the specific language of the nouns, the subjects, the verbs. Has it been done correctly? So again, you are looking at clarity, but you're looking at clarity in terms of sentence structure. How do I say that? I'm gonna come back to that one. But clarity as not in terms of like the structure of the entire paper, but as far as if it were a complete sentence or not. Grammar, punctuation, spelling, and if there's any particular formatting that's required within the document, this is where you're going to focus on those components. So during the editing stage, that's when we're looking at grammar, punctuation, spelling. So the editing stage, this is going to help refine the writing. It makes it more professional, and essentially it is making sure that you have reviewed your checklist and everything is error-free. So just as a side note, I don't think I've ever seen this, just in full transparency. I don't think I've ever seen this as a question on the test, but to help you as a student, because you're eventually going to need to take some sort of English course. When you are in the or getting ready to go into the editing stage, make sure, and I know it's easier said than done because a lot of students work well under pressure and they like to wait until closer to time something's due. But if it's possible, give yourself some time to edit. And before you move into the editing stage, take a little bit of a break between the revising and the editing stage because a fresh perspective is really, really going to be beneficial. Okay, so key parts of editing, terminology to make sure that you're familiar with. Grammar. Again, this is looking at that correct sentence structure. So do I have a subject, verb, complete thought? Subject, verb agreement, verb tense, consistency, correct word usage. Did you use the correct word in that sentence? You're going to look at what we call punctuation. So that's focusing on commas, periods, semicolons, colons, quotations. Mechanics, this is where you're viewing capitalization, word spelling, formatting. Now for editing in terms of clarity, do we have too much wordiness? So removing wordiness, removing redundancy. So did you repeat yourself over and over again? And then also just any unclear phrasing. So not in terms of content, but in terms of sentence structure. And then style and tone, making sure that you're once again going to review the tone that is being set for this intended audience. And then last, proofreading. That's a term to make sure you're familiar with. This is where you'll review the entire work for all of the components that were listed here: grammar, punctuation, mechanics, clarity, style, and tone. So that's what we're doing in that step. Okay, so we're actually coming to the end of 3.1. We're making good time. But just to review, the 5 steps in the writing process that we've talked about are pre-writing. We talked about what a couple of different types of pre-writing are. Writing, conferencing, revising, and editing. Oops. Any questions on anything that we've covered so far? No? Okay. All right. So now it's time for a little bit of practice, and I'm getting the worksheets now. So what I've done is, let's see. If you go to the chat box or the comment section, you should see a link. Let me know if you don't. But you should see a link to this handout right here. Let me pull it up. I'm so sorry if that is super loud in your ear. All right, can everyone see that handout right there? Okay, awesome. All right, so this is a review of 3.1 that we just covered, part 1. So what I want you to do is let's see. We're just going to do part 1 for now because that's what we've covered. But there are 14 questions. I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes to allow you some time to read through and answer each of those questions. And then at the end of 10 minutes, yeah. Well, hi there. I see a familiar name. There you go. There's the link again. Everybody good? All right. So, that way we can practice working within a time. I know a lot of students, they ask me like, how can I get better about testing under time? Well, practice makes perfect. So we're going to test, and that gives you a little less than a minute per question, but it should be ample time for you to answer each of those questions. Okay. All right, so as you're answering, please feel free to utilize and please feel encouraged to utilize the chat box, the comment box if you want to post your answers. I do mute myself so you don't hear me, and I don't disturb you, but that way I can still be available for questions if you have them while you're working. So we're going to look at part 1 only, and you're going to go through and you're going to select your answers. All right? Any questions before we get going with our practice? All right, then. Well, I'm going to set 10 minutes on my timer and then we will come back and check. Okay, ready, steady, go. All right, everybody. So let's go ahead and take a look at our answers. Let me just get those pulled up. All right. Does everybody see that? Yep, there we go. Okay, so for the first one, you should have gotten pre-writing. So when we're gathering ideas, brainstorming, planning, that's pre-writing. Then the one where you are going to translate those ideas into a coherent written piece, that is just writing. Number 3, revising, because remember, revising is looking at content, organization, and structure. Number 4, editing is where we're looking at that grammar, punctuation, style, spelling. Number 5, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I didn't bold these, but for number 5, which of the following is a step in the writing process? Now be careful, select all that apply. So pre-writing, editing, and revising are all steps in the writing process. So C, developing, was the only one that was not a correct answer choice. So A, B, and D for that one. Number 6, what is the purpose of the pre-writing stage? So the pre-writing stage, what is the purpose of that? Well, that one would be B, to compile the ideas and plan the writing. Number 7, which of the following is not a pre-writing technique? So not a pre-writing technique. So we got to think back to the pre-writing step and know, yep, brainstorming is one, outlining is one, but editing and researching, wait, hold on. Oh, editing, researching is a pre-writing technique. Editing would be the one because that's a step all on its own. So C would be your correct answer for number 7. Sorry, I was reading that wrong. Number 8, which stage of the writing process involves refining the draft for clarity and organization? So where are we looking for clarity and organization? So we're looking at a certain step in the writing process. Well, drafting is a step because remember, that's also known as what? Just a little pop quiz for you. Does anybody remember? Yes, in the writing step, that's another name for it. So see, that's why I kept really emphasizing the terminology because on the TEAS, I have seen where some questions, they'll put drafting as an answer option, knowing good and well that you studied the steps as pre-writing, writing, revising, conferencing. You didn't, but then they're just using that other name for it. See how that's done there? So drafting is also known as the writing stage, or the writing stage is also known as the drafting stage. So that's a stage, but that's not going to involve refining the draft because you're creating the draft. Then revising, that's going to be the one where it focuses on clarity and organization because remember, editing is focusing on grammar, punctuation, etc. And then proofreading is not a particular step in the writing process. It's just part of the editing and revising process. So B would be the correct answer there. Number 9, what is the primary focus during the editing stage of the writing process? So that would be B. So the editing stage, that's where we're checking for correct grammar and looking for spelling errors. We are not looking at the formatting and the structure because that's what we did during the revising stage. We've already developed our ideas or arguments during the pre-writing stage, and you've checked for that coherency or coherence and clarity. That was also done during the revising stage. Number 10, which stage of the writing process involves gathering feedback from others and making revisions based off their comments? So that would be B, revising. Now, people probably see, oh, feedback, and they're thinking, well, where's the conferencing one? But remember, you're gathering the feedback. You've already collected it, and now you're making the revisions. So if you're doing the revisions based on the feedback, that's done during the revising stage, not when you're seeking out the feedback. Okay, so be careful of that wording because here they're saying you're gathering the feedback from the others and you're making the revisions, not going out and seeking feedback. Everybody good with that one? Everybody understand that? And then number 11, what is the primary concentration of the drafting stage in the writing process? So drafting, this is where we're going to generate ideas and organize them into a coherent document. Number 12, so we're looking at the writing process that involves the draft for, which stage of the writing process involves the draft for clarity? I think I left out a word there. Involves reviewing the draft for clarity, coherence, and organization. So if it's clarity, coherence, and organization, then that would be B, the revising stage. During the editing stage of the writing process, the writer should be focused on what? So again, this is actually a similar question. It's just reworded. So we're looking for improving, let's see, editing stage of the writing process. No. So this one, I don't know why I left that off. It should be improving the sentence structure and word choice. And it should be checking for spelling and punctuation errors. So that one should be B and C. So 13 should be B and C. 14, what is the purpose of seeking feedback and engaging in revision during the writing process? So to improve clarity and effectiveness of writing. Any questions on those? Everybody good? All right, awesome. Okay, so we're going to flip back over to our notes. And we're going to go ahead and look at 3.2. Analyzing word parts, to establish meaning. So why is this important? What's our big takeaway here? Well, this is to help with effective communication and comprehension, yes. But it's also to help you become familiar with words by being able to break them down based off their prefixes, their suffixes, and their root words. And being able to identify those is a big component of that, which we'll look at that tonight. And then when you can break those down, you'll be able to gain insight into what their definitions are, what their meanings are, and you'll be able to make an educated decision about what those unfamiliar terms mean. So we're going to look at some questions where we're going to use those steps to be able to determine the meaning of a word. So we're going to look at determining the meaning of the words by breaking down their word parts. So to begin with, you know how I feel about terminology. Let's look at it. What is a root word? Well, a root word is going to be the base form of a word. So pretty much think of it as the baby life cycle of a word. So how does it start off out in the great big world? The purpose of this word is to carry the underlying meaning of the word. So the base word is going to have the base foundational definition of that word. So for example, the root word struct actually means to build. You can add a prefix onto it and add something to the beginning, and it could be construct. So you're going to, build. Or you could deconstruct. Dict is to speak. So dictionary, that's the speaking of those, that's the words. Diction is the action of speaking. So again, the root word is just the base form of the word and provides you that base definition. So determining root words, how are we going to do that? Well, analyzing, you're going to identify the root word. You're going to determine the meaning of the root word. And then you're going to consider how that root word will contribute to the overall meaning of the word if we're adding prefixes or suffixes, which we'll talk about in a second. So for example, going back to the word construct, if I look at that word, the root word is going to be struct. The meaning of that root word is to build. So the overall meaning of it is to build something. Now, a lot of students say, oh, well, how am I supposed to know what that root word means? How am I supposed to study? Well, There are some study sheets and good old-fashioned note cards. I know that's probably not what you're wanting to hear, but if this is an area where you find that you are struggling in, then check out the resources that are available and make sure to make yourself some note cards, study. Okay, struct means build. Dict means um speak. So get some note cards and just trudge on. But you do need to make sure that you are familiar with basic root words and their definitions if this is a weak area for you. Now, we've looked at base words, root words. Prefixes, these are going to be the parts of the word that are added at the beginning of the word. So they're going to come at the start of the root word. These are going to modify or change that meaning of the root word. So that's why it's important that you understand there's a base meaning that comes from that root word. And when you add a prefix, or like we'll talk about in a minute, suffix, when you add something to the word, whether it be at the start or at the end, it's going to change that form. It might add to it, or it might change it altogether based off of what prefix or suffix that you're going to use. A couple examples of prefixes are dis, re, free, miss. And again, there are handouts that are out there, and you can typically just look at the most common prefixes that exist, and they're typically going to be repetitive. So there's not hundreds upon hundreds of them out there, but you could easily pull up if you're not familiar with prefix words and what they mean. So how to go about determining prefixes. So you want to identify the prefix in the word. You want to determine the meaning of the prefix. And then you're going to take that meaning of the prefix and combine it with the root word's meaning to create that overall new meaning of that word. So for example, if we took the word unhappy, okay, we know that the root word is going to be happy. So the prefix is un. And un means not or the opposite of. So that's going to mean not happy or the opposite of happy. So we're taking that root word and just applying it there. Any questions so far? Okay. So prefixes. So pop quiz. Prefixes come where? Where do you add them onto the root word at? The start. Exactly. The beginning. Good. Just making sure y'all were awake out there. Okay, so suffixes. So we've talked about prefixes. And then suffixes are going to be attached to the root word at the end of that root word. So you're going to add these to the end of that base word. So they are often going to indicate a part of speech. They can also indicate a verb tense, or they can affect the meaning of the word. So suffixes are going to actually, they can serve a couple different purposes. So they can determine what part of speech a word will be, what verb tense, so is it past, present, progressive. It can determine what part of speech a verb is. I mean, not what part of speech, what tense a verb is, excuse me. Or it can do like a suffix, and it can dictate what the meaning of the word is. A couple examples of suffixes are er, you add that onto the end, ing, ing, able, full, ed words, that's a very common past tense suffix. So again, you really are just looking for the root word, identifying what the suffix is, determining the meaning, or with suffixes, you have to determine if it's going to create a grammar function. So that's what we're talking about with verb tense or part of speech. And then you're going to combine the suffix's meaning with the root word to establish that overall meaning, or identify the part of speech that you're looking at. So, for example, the word happily, the root word is happy. The suffix is ly, so ly. And the meaning of that suffix, the meaning of ly, is in a certain way or characterized by. So if I were to adopt that to the root word, it would be that it is in a happy manner, or it's characterized by happiness. Okay. Now, determining compound words is a little tricky, but what you're going to do is you're going to identify the words that are separate. So what two words are making this new one word? And you're going to determine the meanings of each of those individual words and then come together, combine those meanings of those individual words to create one compound overall meaning of that word. Okay. So I started off with a simple one. You're probably thinking, oh my goodness, but you know what? You've got mail season. We're moving into fall. It's time to think about the bookstores. So if we took the word bookstore, that is actually a compound word. We took two words that exist separately by themselves and we combined them into one. So we took book and store. Well, the meaning of book is a written or printed work. A store, the meaning of the root word store, is a place where goods are sold. So therefore, if I take those two definitions and put them together, well, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. What we've come up with is a new definition, and it means that a bookstore is a place where books or printed works are sold. Okay. So again, I understand that was probably like super easy and you're thinking, why? Well, I wanted to make the example easy so you can understand the concept of what we're trying to do. We're taking the two words, finding the definitions of each word separately, and then merging it together to make it a coherent single definition. Does that make sense? I didn't lose anybody with that one, did I? Okay. All right, well, I've got one more practice, so we're going to go back to our handout. Tried and true. And there's part 2. Everybody with me? Did I give you whiplash? I'm so sorry if I did. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, yep, 20. So this one's a little bit sturdier. So what I was thinking was, if it's okay with you guys, we're going to do the first 10. And I'm going to give you 8 minutes to do those. Then we're going to come back and check them. Just make sure everybody's doing okay. Well, actually, yeah. Do the first 10, and then we'll check them together, and then we'll go back and finish out the rest, just to make sure everybody's on the right page with the thought process. Does that work for everybody? Take a little bit of consensus from the group. Everybody good with that? All right. So we'll do the first 10. I'm going to set my timer for 8 minutes. We'll come back and check, and then we'll make sure everyone's on the right track, and then we'll finish out the rest of them. Okay? So I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes. Ready, steady, go. Okie dokie. So let's come back together. Number 1, A. The word dislike can be broken down into the prefix dis and the root like. Make sure you're paying attention to those labels. Number 2, what does the prefix un generally indicate? That's going to be opposite or not. Number 3, the suffix less, without, or lacking, so that's B. Number 4, the word misunderstand can be divided into what parts? That's actually a prefix miss and root word understand. What does the root bio refer to? A, life. 6, which of the following words contains a prefix? That would be impossible. M would be the root word. Number 7, what is the meaning of the word careless without care? 8, the word has a prefix. Which word has a prefix and a suffix? So this is where you're having to identify. So this one was C, pre, cook, duh. The ed is the suffix there. Pre is the prefix. Number 9, what does the suffix able usually indicate? So that's going to be capable or able to. And then number 10, what is the meaning of biography? So that is a written account of a person's life. B. Any questions on any of those? Question number 2. So 1, somebody else said what's 1, 2, and 3. So going back up. Number 1 was A. That's okay. Number 1 was A. Number 2 is A. And 3 is B. And somebody asked if I could do review number 2. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, number 1. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, I was just making sure I was okay. Number 1. So dislike. So dislike, the root word is like, and this got a prefix added to the beginning. So that's dis. So you're looking at this one. Prefix is dis. The root word is like. Now, B, it starts off right because it's got prefix, but notice this is what I was saying. Make sure to pay attention to the labels because here it's the like is not a suffix, it's the root word. And then for C, prefix is puts die, but where's the S going to? You got to accommodate, you got to account for all letters. So it's not die, it was actually dis. And it had the root word correct. It just didn't. And then with prefix, then with D, they just listed prefix dis, which is correct, but then they put suffix dis. So again, this one, with ones like this, you're really just making sure you're paying attention to those labels. You're welcome. Any other questions for 1 through 10? Definitely don't be afraid to ask. All right. So now we're going to do 11 through 20. So that's what, 9, 10 questions. So I'm going to put the timer back on for 8 minutes because I was watching answers coming in that looked like it was ample time to give everyone. So I'm going to put 8 minutes. We're going to start with number 11, go through, and we'll answer those, okay? All right, ready? And go. All right, take a few more seconds. I still see some answers coming in, so take a few seconds and get those typed in, and then we will check them. All right, everybody, so let's go back over to the answer key. Number 11 is B, without fortune or luck. 12 is B, heat before. 13, B, full of happiness. 14, C, to take apart or separate. 15, an incorrect understanding or confusion. 16, illuminate, or A, I'm sorry. 17, C, condemn. 18 is B, surrender. 19 is D, scrutinize. 20 is rejuvenate, B, rejuvenate. That was it. All right, any questions on those? Yes, I sure can. So let's start off with number 11. Unfortunate mean when analyzing the word parts. So that one's going to be broken down into unfortune and then it. So without fortune, the remember, means not, but it can also mean without. So without the fortune. So it just pretty much took that root word, and the ate is the state of, so pretty much without. The opposite. Oh, yeah. So with yeah, that one is one of those trick ones, because can mean actually the opposite or not, but can also mean without. So opposite of fortune, but is that what unfortunate means? It means without fortune. Yeah, that one's one of those trick ones, because what it's doing is it's taking that one definition of and that other definition of and it's giving it to you as two different answer options. So be careful of those. That's why I said, if it were me, what I did to prepare for my TEAS test, because they had these even back then, what I did was I took, and I just Googled and made my own study guide, just to be honest. I made my own study sheet, and I would Google, most popular suffixes, and just note carded it up. I just made note cards. Let's see, you said 13. Happiness. So ness, the NESS, that is going to mean full of. So full of, actually, that's a typo. That should be happy. I actually just gave away the answer right there in it. And then the act of being happy. So act of, that would be able, if it was like, which that's not really a word. I'm trying to think. What's a suffix that I could come up with? Mm-mm. Yeah, I can't really think about that one. But again, that one's where ness means full of. Because if you do have sadness, you're full of sad, right? Excitement. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yes. Number 13 should have been full of happy. Um, Hold on, I'm trying to scroll through my comments. 15. So same thing with 15, misunderstanding. So you're taking that prefix miss, and that's going to be like that means incorrect. So like misspelling, incorrect spelling, right? So an incorrect understanding is how you split it. And I would say that's one tip. You could probably you've heard me just do it twice now. If there's a word that I'm like, but I don't really know what that prefix is. I don't remember what that means off the top of my head. Well, then what I'll do is I'll try to create or come up with another word that has that prefix attached to it, like I just did, like misspelling. So if something's misspelled, it means it's incorrectly spelled. So incorrect is what miss stands for, so it's the incorrect understanding. B, a clear mistake. I see why. It's almost like what you did was is you took what this means and made it into a new definition of it. But what they're wanting you to utilize is those breakdowns of the prefix, suffix, and the root words. So I see what you did. You actually just took it one step further and created the definition, or like created a differently worded definition, essentially. But we're trying to keep it simple. Sometimes you are. I know it seems very few and all very few times that they do it, but that's where you were try to keep it basic. Let's see, 19. Which word means to examine or investigate thoroughly? Well, if you analyze neglect, definitely we know that's not, because if you neglect something, you don't do anything to it. If you overlook it, that means that you are looking past it. Overlook. So analyze and scrutinize are the two that would be the most logical, just based off looking at them, or and ruling out possible other options. So analyze, when you analyze, let me think on that one. So when you analyze something, that one is, you put A for 19. So see, yeah. So that would be the two that it would be narrowed down to, because you can do process of elimination and you know neglect and C wouldn't work. But yes, analyze is more like your no, not really necessarily examining, because it does say like to examine. So you are examining with analyze, but it's more of looking at the structure of something, whereas you're not, how do I word it? Where you're not really, you're looking at the explanation for it. You're not really breaking it down with that kind of negative connotation attached to it. Because when you scrutinize something, what you're doing is you're breaking it down and you're examining it, but you're looking very closely at it. Um, Analyze is just when you're yes, you're technically examining it, but you're looking more of the explanation of it. Does that make sense? Everybody good? Does that make sense with the difference between analyze and scrutinize? So analyze, yes, you're technically examining it, but this is more of that explanation of, the mechanics of it, whereas scrutinize is actually digging into it and looking into it thoroughly. All right, then. Well, that actually brings us to the end of tonight. Section 3, part 3 is pretty short. It's only got the 2 sections. There are a couple all-in-ones. So there is one on root words, prefixes, suffixes that you could take a look at. There is one on the writing steps that goes a little bit more in depth if you want to take a look at those. If you need more extra breakdown practices on any of those, there are on-demand videos that focus on just those 2 subjects. If you're interested in tutoring, I do have the link up there, but then there's also this overview link. Oops, hold on. Go back over here. So we get more so the definition of the word. So for this one, for 19, when you're looking here, this is when you're looking, yes, you're looking more at the definition. And these, where's that other one? This one, what is the word when analyzing the word parts? See how they specifically asked analyzing the word parts? So that's, you just hit it right on the head. You hit the nail on the head right there. So with this one, it's just saying which word means it. So you're just looking at the definition of it. With this one, they want you to use those word parts, and that's where you're getting that incorporation of it within the definition. Yep, exactly. Yep. So look for it in the question. That's going to help you determine, okay, is it going to be just an overall definition, or not analyzing? Ooh, we're going to kill that word. But are we incorporating those word part definitions? And then same thing, where was that other one? Was it in that first group we did? I cannot remember right now. But it was pretty much the same thing like with those compound words. You're welcome. Yep. Well, you guys actually, I think y'all did very wonderful tonight. If you struggled with a couple of them, please don't beat yourself up, because remember, this isn't all in one. It might be the first time you've actually really looked at it from this perspective and with this insight. So now's the time to go back and practice. But also, like I said, I would make myself, if this was something that you found a little challenging in certain areas, especially like with those prefixes and suffixes, that is nothing to be ashamed of. You did very well for this evening. I would go in and I would make myself little study charts, or more importantly, I do love a note card. I know it is old school, but some things are just tried and true. So, I do have this link up here, and then there's the feedback for the webinar. If you feel up to doing that really quickly, if you give me just 1 quick minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the link for the answer key so that you'll have that to refer back to for the handout. And then I'm also going to upload the slide notes from tonight as well. So give me just 1 quick minute, and then we'll be right there. Let's see. Oh, the screen went black. I'm sorry. There you go. Okay, Facebook and YouTube. There you go. That's the answer key. Zoom. There's the answer key. And then slides. All right, Zoom, you've got the slides. And Facebook and YouTube, you've got slides as well. Let me know if you can't access any of those. All right. Well, that is it. Oh, that's the tutoring request form. I think they actually took that one down. But that's it for the evening. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll be back next week with the reading, and we'll be back. We'll be with part 3 of 3 for that one as well. All right. You're welcome. It was so nice seeing you up here again. I hope to see some of you new folks back next week. I hope this helped. Um, let's see. Can I send that to email? I'm not sure how that works with those links because that's built through our software. Oh, thanks. I'm glad it helped. Um, let's see. All right. For the person that asked about email, let me send you a direct message. All right. Well, I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna stick around for a few minutes just because I know someone had a question in the chat and just make sure everyone else can access those links. But other than that, I'll see you guys next week. All right. I think I got everybody squared away. You guys have a great week. Stay safe, and I hope to see you back next week.